To keep things practical, we're going to look at paragraph-length passages, but the same ideas will apply to much shorter or longer portions of text, anything from a sentence to a book. Typically, though, when you're writing an academic paper, it's paragraphs you'll want to summarize. So let's take a look now at the beginning of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The first key point, if we want to summarize anything, is that you're only giving the most salient or important ideas as presented by the author. So I'll read this opening passage and point out what I think are the most important ideas as we go. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. So far we can see the key information here would be, first of all, the title. As this is the introduction of the book and we see the title written above the paragraph, I'd say this indicates a crucial piece of info that the reader needs to know. And the idea that every Who liked Christmas a lot while the Grinch hated Christmas. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. So we know that no one knows exactly why the Grinch hated Christmas. But I think the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. So according to the author, a strong hypothesis is that his heart was 2 sizes too small. We should also note that the Whos lived in Whoville, while the Grinch lived to the north of Whoville. This seems pretty important to me in setting the scene. So here's a summary of the passage. How the Grinch Stole Christmas opens by recounting how the Whos of Whoville were very fond of Christmas, while the Grinch, living to the north, hated it. Reasons for the Grinch's hatred were inconclusive, but the author posits it might have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. Note that this passage is shorter than the original and contains only the important ideas that we discussed and that we see highlighted on the left here. Incidentally, also notice that the title of the book is italicized and in title case, meaning you capitalize the first letter of each word. This is the way to address a book in text in APA, MLA, as well as Chicago style. And normally you wouldn't want to use direct quotes when summarizing, but you can do it for short key or poetic phrases or particularly unique turns of phrase, which I've done here at the end. And an APA in-text citation includes the last name of the author, the year, and the page number or span of pages. So in this case, pages 1 through 2. And this is what the MLA citation looks like. And here's the Chicago Manual of Style. Now let's summarize the next passage spanning the next 2 pages of The Grinch. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Whos. And here I'd like to make a point about interpretation. So now the author's shifted focus from the Grinch hating Christmas to the Grinch hating the Whos. But he's using the same reasons. So whereas before, when it might have been the Grinch's heart or shoes causing him to hate Christmas, now the same things might be causing him to hate the Whos. There's no explicit reason the author switched focus like this, but I think he's leading us to presume that the Grinch's hatred of Christmas and his hatred of the Whos are one and the same. So we might consider that the author doesn't state the Grinch generally hated the Whos, but that the Grinch was hating the Whos on Christmas Eve. But it's not up to us to provide any analysis or interpretation of the text when summarizing. We simply give the most important ideas as explicitly stated by the author. So we wouldn't mention this shift in focus, for instance. The ideas here so far are just that the Grinch hated the Whos on Christmas Eve and no one knows why. Staring down from his cave with a sour, Grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in their town, for he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. And they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here. So basically we can say here that the Grinch watched the Whos and was scornful of them. Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming, I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming. So we can see here that the Grinch resolved to stop Christmas, apparently feeling it was his duty. So there seems to be a moral component to this, but again, we don't want to interpret or project. We just want to summarize the words as written. And so the summary should be as short as possible and in your own words. So here it is. No one knows why, but the Grinch hated the Whos. He scornfully watched their Christmas Eve festivities, vowing to somehow bring a halt to the arrival of their cherished Christmas Day. And here's the APA in-text citation, the MLA in-text citation, and the Chicago Manual of Style in-text citation. And that's about it for creating the summary. So again, the key point here is that you're giving only the most salient or important ideas as those ideas are presented by the author.